You have stumbled onto another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we strive for ways to achieve those two goals and we invite our friends on to help us. And that's why Liz Simmons, who's visiting us today, is such a great guest because she is all those things. She's going to help us with our financial independence and she's going to help us with our long life. Liz is a woman of action in career and life coaching field. She had a full rupture of her Achilles tendon, which must have been horrible in 2010. And probably that time sort of sitting in bed thinking made her say, you know what am I doing? She ditched her corporate job of 10 years as an environmental scientist, which sounds pretty fun, I have to say, but we can talk more about that. And then she started taking responsibility for her own life. And since then, she has inspired hundreds of women and probably men too, to transform their lives by making changes in their health, their career, and their mindset. And we know mindset is the key to everything, right?
100%.
So Liz is the owner of Strength and Grace Life Coaching, and she's a business mentor for EforAll, which is Entrepreneurship for All. She's an international speaker, a life coach for high schools, the host of the Pivot Posse interview series, which we have to talk about that. Mm-hmm. She's an executive contributor to Brainz Magazine and author of her own weekly blog, which is a big commitment, as we know. Mm-hmm. She has dedicated her life to helping others move from frustrated, apathetic, and insecure to focused, confident, and courageous. Her mission is to help millennials with passion develop the mindset and skills to become successful entrepreneurs. Isn't that perfect? Liz, I'm so excited you're here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Christine. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell me what it was about rupturing your Achilles tendon that made you sort of say, what am I doing spending my life as an environmental scientist?
Yeah. So I know you think that it sounds like amazing, but it's really not. It's actually like a very, like you got to get the job done, So I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. I have a degree in marine biology and I thought it was going to be completely different than it was, which is fine. I was on antidepressants for 7 years during that job. You have those expectations, you graduate college, you went to school for a degree to get this job, right? So you feel like obligated to stay in it. And it's not really what you thought it was going to be, but then you just say, well, work is work and this is the way it is, right? So when I turned 30, I had said, I'm going to revisit my glory days of volleyball, And the second week of that volleyball, I went for the ball, my foot stayed, my Achilles snapped right in half.
Oh my God.
And like at 30, you kind of have like a little like awakening. I think people have at like 30, like you're like, that's why I was like, okay, I'm going to start really getting back into my physical fitness again. And I thought it's the worst thing ever. What it ended up doing was, besides being in 2 different casts for 8 weeks, walking boot for 3 months, PT for 6 months, it actually got me back into yoga because you have to stretch that out, right? And you have to be mindful. And the PT actually made me take time for myself. Like I didn't have a choice. So I had to go to PT 3 times a week. And then I was like, well, if I'm able to go to PT 3 times a week, why aren't I making, time for myself in general 3 times a week, right? Yeah. So that 6 months of PT actually created a habit of me finally showing up for myself again. And then what it made me realize too is like, I'm really unhappy, doing my job. And I definitely haven't been showing up for myself. And I really like yoga. And so I went to Costa Rica in 2013 and became a certified yoga teacher.
Wow.
And then yoga was like, your life is yours, right? And I was like, shut up. I've been blaming everybody else for my life. What are you talking about? Like, I was like, all my life sucks and it's their fault and her fault and his fault. And like, yoga was like, no, dude, it's you. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the one that's making all these choices. I'm the one that's choosing to stay late at work. I'm the one that's choosing to have a negative mindset about everything. And so when I got back, I started teaching yoga corporately. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave. And I jumped and there was a net and I became a personal trainer and a yoga teacher and then a health coach. And it was scary. I was spent 10 years in that field. And I went from like an organic chemist all the way up to a technical representative. So it wasn't like I was status quo. I had been climbing that ladder. So yeah, so then I just made that huge leap because that one injury led me down a whole path. You know, the obstacle is the way, as Ryan Holiday says. So yeah, so then I went and I became a yoga teacher and a personal trainer and a health coach. And when you change your career that drastically, you have to be committed, right? So I worked 7 days a week for the first 2 years. Yeah. And I was happier than I was before. I wasn't on antidepressants anymore. But you gotta, when you make those changes, you've got to understand that you're going to need to give things up, right? So I didn't get a haircut for 2.5 years. And before that, because I was making money, but I was miserable making the money, I got my hair all done. I got all the highlights, the lowlights, the razor cuts, like everything, and I had the designer handbags and all of that. But I was buying those things and doing those things because it was justifying the misery of what I was in. So yeah, I gave all of that up. I didn't buy new clothes for like 3 years. And then I started to make more money and then make more money. And then finally being able to, work 4 days a week and able to get my hair cut and stuff again, no worries there. And then when COVID hit, I lost my job again, right? Because all the gyms closed. So I freaked out for one day. I thought, I can do that. I can beat the couch with a pillow and be like, what am I going to do? And then I asked myself, what if this is an opportunity? And asking myself that one question, because it's the questions that we ask ourselves are the answers that we get. And so if you can change your questions, you can get much better answers. So I asked myself, what if this is an opportunity? And I already had my business, my Strength and Grace, but I only had a couple clients. And I was like, well, what if I can make this a real thing? And then within 3 weeks, I was already making 70% of what I was before.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you knew you were doing the right thing.
Yeah. And I also knew from before, because I'd taken that one leap before, I can make a leap again.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to know, is that you need to start taking the risks just so that you know that you can take the risks.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were doing before, I mean, I hear it so often with folks, is that you were on the run, right? You were on the run away from your emotions, away from the misery, because I'm just gonna have to work. I have to do all these things. I have to, run and climb up the ladder and do all this stuff, because you didn't want to stop and think about how, you weren't happy, right?
Well, yeah. And I just kept on telling myself, oh, I just need to get up another rung and then I'll be happy. I'll just need to get, I never looked around to say, is this the ladder that I want to be on?
Yeah.
And I never even thought, is there other ladders? Like, dude, there's so many ladders out there. So if you're like, 3 steps up and you're like, this ladder still sucks, look around and be like, that rainbow ladder over there, that's the one I'm supposed to be climbing, and then
Exactly.
get down and start that one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Somebody says that, how you get up the ladder and you realize it was leaning against the wrong post,
Yeah. You're like, oh, dude, this isn't where I wanted to be even.
What went wrong? But then, I hear people say, well, I've already been doing it for 10 years. I should stick it out. Like, how long are you planning to live? Right.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to put yourself 20 years down the road and be like, oh, great, I'm still on this same stupid ladder?
Yeah, absolutely. But that must have taken a lot of courage. I mean, how did you feel? Like, I mean, it sounds like you just almost like jumped off a bridge to get to just like walk away from your job and start doing your yoga business.
Yeah. So the yoga training, I mean, a lot of people just think yoga is just about the postures and stuff, but there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of mindset in yoga. And when I was reading the Yoga Sutras, because I had to for my training, it was like little like sparks were like going off in my head, like neural pathways were like clicking. And I was like, oh, I never looked at stuff like this before. And so that shift in that mindset then enabled me to revisit a situation that I had for a long time in a different viewpoint.
Mhm.
And you realize as you get older too. I mean, I know 30 isn't ancient, but at the time I felt ancient at 30, you don't have as much time as you think here. And so we got to remember that, and we're supposed to be happy. And our emotions will tell us when we're happy. So if you're really miserable, know that you're not supposed to be miserable.
Yeah.
You know? And you can be happy and make money. Like, I swear to God, I always thought that that wasn't possible.
It's one or the
You
other.
know? Yeah. Like, and I was like, oh no, I got to pay bills. Well, like, I've written out my checks and been happy making the money doing so. And the bill companies have never sent them back and been like, this is null and void because you were happy making this money. They did not accept it because I
This
wasn't
is not legal
miserable.
tender.
Yeah, right. They were like, we don't care if you're happy or sad. Like, that's fine. Just pay the bills.
Exactly. Exactly. It's true though. I mean, that somehow must be like in our subconscious mindset saying, work is work, right? If it wasn't work, they wouldn't pay you to do it. So you can't, don't expect to be happy. And that's such a shame. Such
It,
a
it
shame.
it is such a shame. And I think that there was a culture for a long time that believed that, and I think that, one of the reasons why I do work with millennials is because they've kind of like really jostled the whole entire viewpoint of what it is. And, I'm like on the cusp of Gen X and millennial, like literally I'm like 1980. So I don't know which way I go, but I can see both, like, and I can be like, maybe they're not lazy. Maybe they're just like, why can't we have a purpose and make money? And all of us before were like, no, dude, it's just supposed to suck. Don't you know that?
Right?
And now we're learning that you can, and especially nowadays, there's so many opportunities to find a way to make money doing what you like.
Absolutely. But you have to think out of the box. I mean, how do you know? How do people who are sitting here listening and thinking, well, my job sucks and I hate it, but how do you get yourself ready to make that same leap that you made?
So you got to start asking different questions. You actually got to, who are you? What do you like to do? And start exploring yourself and start showing up for yourself too, even outside of work. Because I feel like if you haven't been showing up for yourself, then it's going to be really hard for you to make a big jump believing in yourself. But you can't focus on the negatives because that's all you're ever going to see. And then that's going to be, that you're going to be fettered into that, so to speak. You need to start looking at the positives and start asking yourself, are they really making me do this, or is this my choice? There's consulting firms and stuff like that are very high up there, and people have been really stressed out and they'll give in their notice, right? But they'll still have 2 weeks of vacation that they won't use even after giving in their notice. Like, why didn't you use your vacation?
Exactly.
And are you blaming it on the company, assuming that the company wants you to be miserable? Maybe they don't. Maybe you need to just show up for yourself.
Yeah, boundary setting, I think, is very difficult in an environment. If you're in a job where it's very competitive or there's potentially a lot of work to do, it's very hard to say. I remember when I used to work in corporate America, they had, I was very organized. So I a lot of times got my stuff done really quickly. I was always good at calling people back, and some people like wouldn't call people back. So they had all these angry people, right? So one phone call, if you just pick it up, it's 5-minute phone call. But if you don't pick it up and you don't call the person back, then it becomes a 20-minute or half hour or 2-day problem that you then have to deal with. And so, I'd be done and it'd be, 4:30, 5 o'clock and be like, all right, well, I'm heading out. And my boss actually said to me, well, why don't you see if you can help someone else? I said, people know where I am. If they need my help, they can come and ask me. I just thought, what a weird thing to do, because she just thought it was horrible that I was leaving at 5 o'clock. I thought, I got a life, I got shit to do, but setting those boundaries for yourself and for others, right? That has to be key if you're going to stay in the corporate world. I mean, I know that's not really your topic so much, but it just seems like.
But if you're going to stay in the corporate world, then work for a corporation that's going to respect you.
Yeah.
If they don't understand that there's more to life than just the end, the bottom line or whatever you're doing, then do you really want to work for a corporation like that? And you can always think about it like, if you're a parent or whatever, do you want your kids to think that that's the way life needs to be? Because it really, really doesn't. And I do agree that, like, even when I was in corporate, there was a lot of like how many hours did you work this week? Oh, I worked 5 more than you, you know? Like, dude, if you're on like, your deathbed, are you going to be like, I got 20 more hours than Joe yesterday? Like that's not your life,
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
know?
You think I work 5 less hours than you did. Ha ha ha. I'm more efficient than you or whatever,
Yeah.
right? It should be the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't need to be miserable and work. So
So people who are thinking that they might be ready, the first thing you would suggest, right, is just that they start to like take care of themselves and make sure that they are going to have the confidence, right?
the confidence, and they need to start asking and knowing themselves. Like, people don't really know themselves. And I was listening to a podcast, Impact Theory, the other day, and this guy was talking about how corporations might be eventually disintegrating, like the big ones, because everybody's kind of getting smaller. And he talked about creating your own personal brand. And I think that, some people think branding is just logos and, colors and, font, but there's so much more to it. There's your brand personality and the attributes and the benefits and what's your brand mission. People need to ask those questions of themselves. What are your benefits that you offer, both the emotional and the functional? What is your personal brand's mission and vision? What do you see yourself as? Who do you see yourself as? Who do you want to be? And then who are you now? And then fill in that gap.
Yeah.
But if you don't start asking the questions and understanding who you really are, then you're not going to know what makes you happy and what makes you really sad, because you're not actually in tune. So ask those questions first, show up for yourself in some way so that it builds the confidence in yourself. And then, when you do make the leap, you got to have a North Star. So I think that that's really key when you're starting your own business or making a huge leap. Because, yeah, I was a yoga teacher and a personal trainer, but really that is a franchise business. You are a contract employee, your clients, sourcing your clients is all on you. You work your own schedule, you create your own relationships, you do your own advertising. Like, for 7 years, I was basically running a franchise. So you got to have a North Star when you make those kind of leaps. Get clear on what you want to do, who you want to be, and who you want to serve.
Yeah. How did you do that for yourself? How were you able to navigate that for yourself?
So some of it was trial and error, because, you get your imposter syndrome and you think you've just got to be everything to everybody. Niche down, know who you really like to work with, like when I was a personal trainer, I didn't want to do the heavy lifts, right? And I learned that don't do the stuff that you don't want to do, because it's gonna show.
Yeah.
So it's much more corrective exercise and weight reduction. But then, coming in with COVID and everything changing and me building up my business, and then I was like, I really want to work with people that are in the situation I was in 10 years ago. And that shows, because now that passion just comes out. And that is read, and people know that you're authentic, and so I have a life mission statement. And I think that that's something everybody needs to write, is a life mission statement. 3 sentences about what is the mission of your life.
Yeah.
And then that will help you figure out where you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. My mentor has us, I do like an annual meeting every year, and we start with our obituary. You're like, okay, this is how you want to be remembered when you're gone. What do you have to be today? Who do you have to be today in order to be that person, however many years from now, hopefully many years from now, that they're reading
Right.
your obituary, right? So
Yeah. And that's another really good point, Christine, is work things backwards. I always, figure out where you want to be and who you want to be. That's really key too, because that's what you can control, is the who. And if you become the who, the what will follow, and then work it backwards.
So what kind of things can people do if there's a lot of fear around this. There's a lot of potential negativity when you might beat yourself up about it. How can you keep your mindset to be more helpful to you while you're making these kind of changes?
Okay, so know you're gonna fail.
Uh-oh.
Right? Know that you're going to make mistakes. Know that things aren't gonna go right, and know that don't take it personal. Laugh at it and get back up and learn from it. So like that's number one. Failing is really just learning. You tried something, you got a result. It wasn't the result you wanted. That's all it really is, right? So go back, figure out what you did that got that result, make a few tweaks, try again, and then if you think that you like a couple of different, areas, talk to people that are doing the jobs that you think you want to do, and audit it. Like if you're really into it and say you want to be a realtor, you're not sure, but maybe you want to be a realtor, right? Go find a realtor. Ask them if you could attend their open house with them on, Saturday, and see what they do and see how it feels.
Mhm.
You can audit a job without actually having to take it on yet.
Right. No, it's a great idea. Excellent idea. And
Yeah.
spend a day in the life or a couple days in the life of the person who you think you want to be.
Yeah. And make sure that they're happy doing it. Because if they're miserable doing it, that's going to be the wrong person.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, that's an excellent point, because you don't know, like if you would have done that with your environmental science job, you might have never taken it on, right?
yeah, like it was all chemistry. And I was like, that was my least favorite
Yeah, I thought I was going to be swimming with the fishes. What
science.
happened?
Yeah. Not so much.
So
But
are
and
there,
know that it's yeah.
so no, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just gonna say, no, it's okay to feel bad as well, because that means that you're still getting a result. If you're unhappy doing something, it means that okay, this isn't right for me. You don't have to get even more judgmental on yourself for being unhappy with it, or even feel crappier about feeling unhappy with it. That is just your emotions trying to let you know what path you're on.
Yeah, you follow
Yeah.
your little barometer and make sure
Yeah.
that it's, so I know that we actually touched on a few of these before, like some of the limiting beliefs that people have about themselves, and that as we bump up against them, sometimes we have a tendency to do things to kind of sabotage ourselves and, make it seem like maybe we're not really worthy of this beautiful life that we have. I mean, are there any tools that you can suggest to help people deal with those kind of roadblocks and things that come up?
Well, yeah. So again, ask what is in my circle of influence with this, right? So what can you control? Because that's always really, really important. There's many things that we can't control. And the more that we focus on those, the less action we're going to be able to take, right? So circle of influence is key. Figure out what's in your circle of influence. Say, is there anything that I could possibly do to change this? Know that those roadblocks, those obstacles aren't there to stop you. You're supposed to either go like over, around, or through somehow. And be open to changes and to pivots, because when I had lost my job and I had to switch over to personal training online, I had never done personal training online before, and I was like poo poo all over it. I was like, oh no, you cannot do that. That's just not gonna work. And then I was like, well, let me just try. And remember that you can always try. It doesn't mean you have to be fully committed. And I tried it and it was like, this really works, you know? So open to just try and experience and new ways and new avenues. Never shut yourself off, never say never, because that might be the one thing that's limiting you. And you are worth it, because remember, like 1 in 400 trillion, that's the odds of being born, right? So you don't overcome odds like that to get tripped up by something so small.
Wow,
Yeah.
I love that. That's really powerful. One in
Yeah.
400 trillion.
Yeah.
Holy
Like Mel
moly.
Robbins talked about it in her TED Talk like in 2016 or whatever, but it's really true. It's like for all the DNA mixing and matching and to be born here and for you to make it through it's 1 in 400 trillion. Like for all that to happen, you don't go through those kind of odds without a purpose.
Right. Right. Wow. So how can you know that your problem is inside your head and not an actual legitimate problem outside that, because you could have said, well, this is COVID, the whole country, the whole world is dealing with this issue. This, it's just going to suck. I just can't do my job. How do you know that that's actually something that's in your own head?
So you got to ask yourself, what can you do? Like 120%. And again, if you're focusing on the external, if you're focusing on the situation and you're making it bad and you're only seeing the negative, that's in your head. All right. Because I had an Achilles injury and it snapped. Right. And I thought that stuff was over. That one major injury set up a whole entire life change for the better. It's all about how you respond and you react. I mean, you can get frustrated a little bit, but really negative emotions are only there to basically take the hand off the fire real quick, to let you know that you're in pain. That is it. Everything else needs to be on the positive. And you can take that or not, but eventually you need to look at things in a positive light. And when you do that, it changes the hemisphere in the brain, right? You go to the one that's more creative and more solution oriented. So look for the solutions, not the problems.
It's true. And as long as the problem is outside of you, you can't control it.
You can't. Right? And if it's outside of you, don't take it personal. Like COVID happened for everybody, not just you, not just me. And we're all responding to it differently.
Yeah.
And things were really bad that happened, but you don't have to suffer more because other people were suffering, like people died from COVID, but I don't need to sit here and suffer to acknowledge that death. I can do whatever I can with my life to make it matter. If all those people died, maybe I really need to live my life as much as I can because those people couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think that the solution to your problem has to be to cure COVID, then,
I really hope you're a scientist.
Yeah, exactly. You better get to work here because,
yeah,
absolutely. Now, when somebody, first of all, how does somebody know? How do your clients know that they need to call you? Like what is happening in their life that they know, what, Liz is going to save me here. She's going to help me.
Yeah. So if they're blaming others, if they're shaming themselves, if the 5 days a week that they work are just miserable and it ruins the other 2 days that they're off because they're just thinking about that Monday. If that Sunday night, you're like, oh my God, I can't go in on Monday. This is going to be horrible. If you're not showing up for yourself, if you told yourself you were going to go to the gym or work out 3 times and you didn't do any, if you're like me and you were drinking on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays to try to numb out everything else, that's when you need to call me. And if you're ready to, I'm very honest with people. Like I don't sugarcoat anything because that's just it's just not honest. I'm just very honest. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's really open it up and see what's going on. And I will believe in you. Like that's the thing is I believe everybody is capable, creative, and unique. And so to have those attributes, that means that you can do anything. And if you feel like you're disappointing yourself or others, come to me. You'll never disappoint me because I'll be there for you wherever you are. So yeah, so if you're miserable in your job and you want to change and you don't know how, come see me.
Beautiful.
If you have a brilliant passion and you don't know how to implement it into a business, come see me.
What a beautiful job. Like what a wonderful calling, right? To be able to facilitate these kind of changes in people's lives.
Yeah, it took me 10 years to get to this point to actually really step into this. I've always been a coach though. Like I've always been super interested in people, and I always love cheering people on. Like it's like my favorite thing is to see people succeed. So, but it took me a long time to actually step into the role professionally,
It was there. It
but I
was knocking on your
love it.
door, right?
It was, and I was like, no, that can't be for me. And then like I answered, I was like, oh snap, you're for me. What's up? This is
Awesome. Awesome. So how do people, how does it begin? You know, how do you sort of, when somebody first comes in and works with you, like, how do you sort of start?
Right. So there's always a free strategy coaching session first. We have to make sure that we get along because it's a co-creative process, right? We need to work together to build the life you want to live. If we don't get along, that's not going to work, you know? And you come, you know, you can either call, we either do it on the phone or via Zoom. Come with a specific agenda. It's very important for anybody that's in therapy or in coaching. Always bring an agenda because that matters. You know, you always want to work on something in particular and figure out where you want to get with that. And then we'll go through that process. You'll understand how it goes. And then if we work, we can set it up. It's a monthly retainer and everything. Generally, you know, it's about 3 to 6 months. If it's like a big change, like a full-on business change, that's usually about like a 6 month, just because you're going to be like, I don't know. I'm so comfortable in my job right now. And I'm like, really? Because you were like crying last week about it. And we get comfortable in our discomfort. The brain doesn't like to change. So there's a lot of mental work to do. But once you start building the blocks and showing up and doing a little bit here and opening up, all of a sudden you'll see so much more.
Yeah, the closer you get, the higher you get up your own little ladder, right? Suddenly the view improves.
Yeah, and people, you can build your own ladder. You don't have to go climb anybody else's. You can build your own. And that's what I love about, you know, being a business owner is like, I'm building the freaking ladder. And I get to decide what I get to work on. And if it fails, that's okay, because at least I got to do what I wanted to do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I've been an entrepreneur for many years, and I think to myself every so often, like I remember what it was like to like work for someone else. I mean, it really ruins you.
It totally does. Because like even as like a personal trainer, like as a contract employee, I like was able to create the whole entire health coaching program myself. You know, like they were like, we don't care what you do, Liz. If you want to do it, you do it. And I was like, perfect. Created whole health coaching program myself, you know, ended up getting like 17 clients through that, you know. And when you get to play in your job, like it's amazing. Like I'm going to write blogs about this week, and then I'm going to do it this week. And you know, Christine, right? It is a lot of time. It is a lot of work, and I do kind of work 7 days a week somehow or other, but I'm so much happier. And it's stuff that I'm interested in. And when you're interested in things, you'll keep learning about it.
Right.
And you'll keep growing because you're actually interested.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it doesn't really feel like work.
It doesn't. Well, except for, I don't know, finances kind of feel
Yeah.
like filling
It's
out those
funny, you know,
accounts.
yesterday I just interviewed somebody who's a bookkeeper and she can totally take that off your hands for you. She's fantastic.
I know. That's the other thing you got to understand is like, what is your time worth? How much misery is this creating for you? Do you need to outsource that?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like my goal is to get to the point where I don't have to do anything I don't like to do.
100%. And you know what? The world will be much better for that, because then you'll be just doing so much more and being more creative and expressing it in that way. We all need to be the best us that we can be.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny that these things are coming up that some folks I have just recently interviewed, this lady called Amy Ranger. She was saying, you know, we are so like hardwired to try to develop our weaknesses. Like, oh, I'm no good at this, I'm going to try to work on it. And she said, like, develop your strengths. The hell with your weaknesses, outsource your weaknesses, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like develop your strengths. And then, you know, once you do that, work on your weaknesses a little bit. But like, if it makes you miserable, if it's not because you're not, if it's because it's new and it's hard, that's different. But if it makes you miserable, why?
Yeah,
Why do it?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like I would never want a cardiac surgeon who was miserable at being a cardiac surgeon. You know, like, no, I really want that one to be like, this is my passion and I love it. And I think that we need to look at that with everything, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I used to my doctor years and years ago, he just loved it so much. He was always reading about the latest stuff and read breakthroughs and different kinds of things. And you have a different kind of doctor who's like you say, they're just going through the motions. They've been doing it for so long. They're just putting their time in until they feel like they're old enough to retire. And it's a completely different experience.
It is. It really is. You want the one that's passionate.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have anything else that you wish I would have asked you, that as far as like things you'd like to share with people who are struggling with trying to make this decision?
I mean, I don't think so. Just, step out and at least like you could call me or whatever. And that might seem like a really big thing, but even that little step, even if you don't work with me, that is one step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So if you can just take one little step in the direction of that says this is where I'm going to try to show up for myself, that one little step will be huge. And I think a lot of people, this is another thing I'd like to talk about, is we've often created a habit of self-disappointment,
Mm.
right? Like we don't go to the gym. We don't eat the food that we told ourselves we were going to do. We didn't send out any resumes this week, and we always say again, I didn't do it again, or I didn't do that again. We've literally created a habit of self-disappointment.
Mm.
You need to like nip that in the bud and know that that is not okay, because that's the worst habit to create. So take the one little step that will start to break that habit.
You're so right, Liz, because you start to be like you don't believe yourself anymore. Like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get up early and I'm going to go for a walk. And then in the back of your mind, you're going, yeah, sure you are. Right?
Yeah, sure you are.
Yeah.
But you need to say, yeah, sure I am. And I am. And even if it's only 5 minutes, again, like for habits, super small, inexcusable. Make them so small that there's no way you can talk yourself out of it. So if it's even just opening up, going down into the gym in your basement and just standing there for 5 minutes, you don't even have to do anything. You just got to stand there for 5 minutes. You tell me you can't do that. You know you can. Get down there, stand for 5 minutes. I'm telling you, that's all you have to do. Make things very small, but that's going to keep building and building and building.
Absolutely. No, that's excellent advice, because you're right. That's something that we do to ourselves, is we just say like, oh, I'm not going to eat any of this today, or I'm not going to, and in the back of your mind, you're like, well, maybe I'll have a little.
Right? And then also know that like that resistance that you're getting will be expected, and it's not just about you. Everybody gets that resistance. We always compare ourselves to people that are doing it, and we're like, oh, why is it so easy for them? Well, you're seeing them at a totally different state. And how do you actually know it's easy for them? Did you actually go and say, man, this just looks so easy for you? And they'll be like, dude, I had to like pump myself up for a half hour just to get here. So remember, comparison's the thief of joy. Just everybody, it's hard for everybody. There's resistance for everybody. And that's the way the brain is wired, right? Because it actually takes more calories to change a habit. So the brain is like super efficient. It's like, we don't want to waste any calories. So we'd rather you just stay here and be miserable, because this actually takes less calories. Oh, and you're going to be like, oh, okay. No, you got to understand that that's what's happening. Don't eat sugar just to add the calories in to compensate. And then just get
I'll
up
have a
and
Hershey
do
bar,
it.
and then I'll be able to make a change.
Right? I know. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that resistance, that's why it's happening, is because it takes more energy in the system.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Just to save a few calories. I've been in this job for 10 years. Oh, that's no good.
Yeah, but to the brain, the calories could be like, but if we get chased by a saber-toothed tiger, those 10 calories could like really
You'll
just
be
save
thanking
us,
me.
Yeah, you'll be thanking me later.
Beautiful. Liz, thank you so much. Oh, you know what? In parting, you talked about a couple of podcasts. Do you have any recommendations to folks, aside from yours, of course, that people should be listening to in order to? So let me just tell tell us the name of your interview series again, and then tell us maybe one of your favorite podcasts for folks who are kind of in this wavering place.
Yeah, so mine is the Pivot Posse, interviews with those that have heeded the call. So it's a really good one because it literally it's interviews with people that have changed their lives drastically, right? And that's in my Facebook group, the Entrepreneurial Mindset with Strength and Grace. Ones that I listen to, I got to give you more than one. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. All right. Impact Theory with Tom Billio. That's been around for a long time. That's really good. School of Greatness with Lewis C. Howes is really great as well. How I Built This, which is, I think, NPR. That's a really good one too. That is like, people that have built their businesses and how they've done them. And I also listen to a lot of Gary Vee as well, just because he's like, he does not sugarcoat anything.
That's for sure.
And when I first heard him, I was like, he's kind of like not nice. And then like I started like re-listening to him again. I'm like, all right, he's actually really good. So that's kind of who I recommend.
Oh, great. Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And I know, listeners, that you have got a lot out of this. So make sure you share it with a friend who you know is struggling to make these kind of decisions. And call Liz and she can make them easier for you. So all of Liz's contact info is going to be on the podcast notes and on the website, which is getyourfillpodcast.com. But you can check her out for sure on strength-grace.com is her website. And is there any other contact info you want to share? That, I mean, I'm going to put all your links on the website, but is there anything else that people should?
No, I'm like out there. Don't go to Twitter. That's the only place. Just don't go to Twitter. But everywhere else, I'm there, and the Entrepreneurial Mindset Facebook group is probably the most important one. Yeah.
Okay, great. Excellent. So be sure to tune in next week when we're going to have some more exciting people who are going to help us make some shifts in our lives. And in the meantime, have a fantastic week. Oh, and by the way, remember to help with my goal of getting into 50 countries. We're up to 21. We just added Australia. So now please forward this podcast to a friend who you know who's in another country so that we can get our numbers up in other places, and have a fantastic week.